Well, welcome to Leadership 25. Looks like chapter 5, which will be week 5 on the law of addition from John Maxwell's book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So Diane and I will cover a few leadership tips, then we'll have discussion today, hopefully that's based around what we're talking about, this leadership principle. I want to kick off today and touch on something I touched on at the conference and build upon it a little bit because it has everything to do with this chapter. And as I was rereading the chapter, when it talked about there's this one sentence in there that says becoming a leader means to give up our right to think of ourselves first. And this is a big one, when it comes to the law of addition, because we are inherently selfish, as human beings. But I believe only through Christ, can we really be rid of unselfishness? Because the greatest leader that ever walked the face of the earth obviously was Jesus Christ, and he was a real man, and historical accounts prove what kind of leadership he provided, and it was powerful leadership. But he said, I did not come to be served, but to serve. He was a servant leader. And he didn't think of himself first. He was always thinking of others, and he led with love, and he led with compassion.
So, going back to the law of addition, it's so incredible when we think about it and line it up with what we do in direct sales or multi-level marketing, because our focus is always to add more people, right? And so how do we add more people? We add more people with, just like Danny's talking about, it's the little things. Those little things where it's not about us, but it's about them. One of the lines that John Maxwell said is that leadership is selflessness. So we need to it's not about putting us first. It's not about, everything about me, myself, and I, but if we're serious about the law of addition, that we have a strong focus on putting others first. Now, Danny and I understand we have to have boundaries up because we know it's important for us to have a life outside of our business. But at the same time, if we do things right every single time that we're intentional with our business, then we're 100%, we're 100% in. We're not just rushing through something. That's why Danny and I'm not somebody that's just going to pick up the phone while I'm out shopping or in the grocery store, unless it's somebody very, very close and already knows me, because I don't want to partially be in. I want it to be all about them, not me looking for the things I need at the same time that I'm trying to, impart something into a brand new person and help them in the process of becoming great here and adding value to them and encouraging them and being intentional with them. And so there's some areas that I choose not to multitask because I want my time to be very intentional towards them, and I'm doing all the right things to really add value to the conversation, not just have a conversation. And so that's just one of the examples that you have to pay attention to on the areas that you're rushing through, because this is about building relationship. This is about building trust. And the way that you build relationship and the way that you build trust is to become a value in somebody else's life, right? So that they're gravitating to who we are and how we do it. They want to emulate what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then your energy is not, fast and flippant, but your energy is drawing them in. And you're encouraging, you're exciting, you're leading, you're painting vision, you're empowering, you're doing all those little things. Because so often, guys, you have to remember, people don't believe in themselves. And so therefore, as leaders, we have to help them believe in themselves. Sometimes they borrow our belief just to get started. We have to believe in them before they believe in themselves. And that is so important, that we're taking time to, encourage them, remind them how great they are. You got to remember, people are not encouraged out there in the world. Even married people don't take time to encourage each other. Like, they may love each other, but at the same time, do they stop and say, you're just incredible. I think you're a great wife. I think you're a great dad. I love the way you parent. I love the way you do business. That was an incredible, Zoom, I was listening to that three-way. You did a rock star job, thank you for doing whatever. Like, even though we love each other, even though we love our children, we don't necessarily stop to encourage, the people around us. So one is like, start doing that, like be better at that, because there's no doubt that what he says to me is way more powerful than what anybody else says to me. And then on top of that, take time to, do that to others, make sure that in the conversation, that if you're having a conversation with one of your up and comings or somebody that you're, excited about joining the team, then give them a word of encouragement, give them something that makes them feel value. And this is how you start to see things added within your organization, because you want them drawn towards what you have, drawn towards who you are. And it's not by us telling everybody, here's who I am, right? It's here's who you are.
Yeah.
And here's who I believe you can be. It's the addition part. It's the missing pieces, so to speak, that they don't have, that we're adding into them so that we add to the team.
And when we even teach on the 2020 principle, it is addition. It's just you add one to the right, you add one to the left, you keep adding, 2 right, 2 left, 4 right, 4 left, however you go, but you're getting to 20 right, 20 left, and you're going beyond that. And as long as you keep active and you keep adding people, it's going to multiply, because you're teaching a principle where addition turns into multiplication and it begins to compound. And that's why this particular binary compensation plan is so powerful. I can't believe that, that it took us 25 years or so to learn that principle. But once we saw it, we're like, oh my goodness, this is, if I ever started a direct sales company on my own, which hopefully I never will. But if I did, I would have a binary compensation plan. There's no doubt in my mind at this point in life, based on what I've seen, because when you can add people to one side, to 2 different teams, one on the right, one on the left, and keep adding, which creates a multiplication effect through compounding, those one little person at a time, it starts compounding, where now your business starts to multiply. But that takes, it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes patience, but it takes consistency, because those things build over time, and you will see the multiplication aspect happen if you're an adder. I mean, if you really are adding to your business, because other people are recruiting when you're recruiting, other people are adding when you're adding. But if you just have added 2 or 3 people in, and you think, you just think it should take off like a gusher, like a waterfall, and it doesn't, that's because you are not thinking about continuing to talk to people and add value to people's lives. Our job is to plant seeds. The Bible says, as one sows, another waters, but God brings the harvest. If you understand that process, recruiting will become easy, because you're a seed sower. Too many times you're worried about the harvest, and it's not the harvest. Your job is to sow and water. Sow and water. How do you sow? You sow by adding a seed into the ground. You water, and you water by, you're adding water to a seed. And in that process, seeds sprout, and seeds begin to grow, and seeds become plants or trees that bear fruit and multiply. And so if you just knew how important it is to sow seeds into people's life, water people's lives, God will take care of your harvest. God will take care of all that other stuff, because God is the God of multiplication. You are not necessarily the multiplier. God is.
And I would say one of the things that's really huge here is by, for lack of a better way of putting it, slow down instead of speeding up. Like, take time with people individually. If you've got somebody brand new, then the next step is to, be intentional about them understanding, how to get started, and acclimate them to the success system, show them what to do next, literally walking them through it. I understand that we have a system that's turnkey ready, but it still can be very foreign to somebody that's never done this before, or that the system's new to them. So don't assume that it's that easy. We've got to make sure that we do our part. And then the follow up and the follow through, and loving them through, and encouraging them through, and checking back in. I mean, all of those things are so important, but literally having those onboarding conversations to make sure that they really understand, because we want to give them the best opportunity to succeed here. And that takes us as their enroller or their leader to be able to do that.
Many of you have heard trainings where there's 4 types of people. There's adders, there's subtractors, there's multipliers, and there's dividers. Which one are you? And, we all had to learn to add before we learned multiplication. But because multiplication really comes from addition. It's addition and then multiplication. And so same thing, principle applies with subtraction, and division. It happens the same way. But some people are good at adding, but they also are really good dividers. And then their business doesn't grow because they can add well because they have enough charisma, they can say the right things, and they can get people involved. But then they start talking negative about other leaders. They start talking negative about their own leaders, and they start dividing, and they don't even realize they're dividing. They think they're protecting a group of people, and they've been adding, and they're really dividing. And so I don't want to be an adder and a divider. I want to be an adder and a multiplier, because as I add, in order to multiply, I just keep watering with positivity, life-giving words, stick to the plan, stick to the system, and allow my seeds to have the maximum opportunity to sprout and to grow and to produce fruit. And how that's going to happen is through my intentionality of adding value to other people, my intentionality of being positive about other people, my intentionality about always never presuming that I understand someone's life perfectly. Because what we do as leaders, sometimes we can presume we know what all's going on. We can make little judgments about people, and we don't know all the things that are going on in their life behind the scenes that they're not even talking about, that may be traumatic and maybe have caused temporary circumstances in their life where things are going slower, and or they've gotten discouraged because of certain things happening that are unrelated to business. And so you always have to take those things into consideration before you speak, because you don't want to be presumptuous. You want to be loving and caring for people so that they know that you do care and that you're seeking to understand, not to be understood. Because that's a big part of adding value to other people, is seeking to understand them, not just to be understood.
Yeah, so good. And so, just some practical things that you can write down when it comes to like making sure that you can take this law and use it towards the benefit of your own business is, one, is serve before you sell. Like, this is not about going out and selling something. This is about serving others and meeting their needs and being intentional because you genuinely care about them. We're not just looking to make a dollar, we're looking to change a life. The other is spotlight others. This isn't about you just acknowledging. We should acknowledge effort as much as we should acknowledge results. So like, just be intentional about the people on your team and how, what they're doing and what efforts they're putting forth. And when you see what they're doing and the things that are happening, then, say something about it, love on them, encourage them, lift them up. And if they're not, ask them, how are the results going? Whenever I see a post, I'm like, hey, I see that you made a post. That's awesome. How are your conversations going? How can I help you? And so I want to make sure and, encourage them forward. Or if I see somebody, hey, I saw you just sign somebody up. That's exciting. Congratulations. Is that somebody that, I need to meet? Are you ready for me to, to help? Are they looking at the business? Are y'all having that kind of conversation? So just, another thing to, to just be intentional about spotlighting others. Be accessible. Your team should feel that they can reach out without hesitation. And that's something that Danny and I talk about a lot. We want to make sure that our team knows they can reach out. Now remember, we have leaders between us and others. So we can't be the only people that people reach out to. But at the same time, we want to make sure that you're using other people, that you're not, that you're not thinking automatically, well, they're too busy for me. That's unworthiness. You're already making yourself are counting yourself unworthy of their time.
Yeah.
So don't do that. I learned a long time ago that you've got to ASK to GET.
Yep.
You've got to ask to get. You cannot, your leaders cannot read your mind. And so make sure that you are asking, and then, you know, also note that, you know, they love you and they want to help you. So, you know, keep that in mind, but be accessible. So that's really important for you to do the same thing for your team. Custom coach, don't cookie cutter. You know, even though we have a cookie cutter business, everybody sees things differently. Everybody understands things differently. That's why we have different people explaining it different ways. So make sure that you understand that you've got to, that's why the intentional time is huge with people, because you're going to understand how they understand. And I just strongly recommend that you make sure that you coach somebody with intention, because everybody is different. Did you have anything to add?
Well, that's why in here, you know, and John Max was really, you know, focusing on the listening part of things. He said mature leaders listen, learn, and then lead. They listen to learn their people's stories. And so you want to listen and learn and then lead. That's a huge part of things.
Very, very good. So, okay, another one that I'm going to suggest is how we can use this in our business is encourage growth beyond the business, right? Because we know as people grow personally, that that their business will grow, right? That's what we want to do but we want to encourage it. So it's not always about how to do the business better. Sometimes it's a great podcast that you grabbed. Like you want to, you know, you might have found something, you might have been listening to something and then you're like, hey, I just heard this, this is going to be exciting for you to listen to too. So it's just sharing these little things that will encourage them and lift them up. And of course, get them on the path of wanting to grow too, because you were talking about that. Some people don't really understand, you know, people don't understand about personal growth. They think like, that's why we talk about
it just goes over
leadership.
their head. Like you start talking about personal growth and they go, yeah, I've heard of that before. Yeah. But they don't change. Nothing changes.
And because a lot of people think they don't need change. They don't, like, personal growth isn't something that people think that they need.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've really started talking about, you know, beating the leadership drum, because leadership is something that everybody wants to grow in. So, but they really are two in the same, right?
Yeah.
The stronger you become personally, the better leader you're going to become. So continue to do that also. And, you know, send the podcast, the video, help them grow personally, spiritually, whatever it may be. And it's not just about, you know, you talking business with them every time,
Yeah.
you know, and asking about how are your kids doing? What's going on in life? Like those little things that you're getting to know somebody, because people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those, you know, old leadership tools, those old sayings, repeat it. People don't care. People don't care about how much you know until they
know how much you care.
know how much you care.
So I'll finish with this and we can open it for questions. Proverbs 18:16-17 says this: a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. So if you want to add value to people's lives, just know that this is this principle is true. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. And it could be women also, because your gift opens up the door. A lot of people think that's gifts inside of you, spiritual gifts or whatever. That's not what it means. It actually means a literal gift, your gift that you have. And when you bring someone a gift, whether it's a card or a book or anything, any kind of gift, a thoughtful gift, when you bring a gift to someone, it makes room for you before great kings. And it is powerful. It's a powerful, powerful concept, especially when people aren't expecting anything. So this is how you can add value to someone's life and it wind up multiplying in your favor.
That's Proverbs 18:16-17.